Good day, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Molly Newman, and I'm a conference producer for Terrapin. It is my great pleasure to host this webinar in which we have proudly partnered with OpenWay, quick payment innovations in the cloud. Please note that there are polls that you guys will need to complete. As such, I would like to just take this opportunity to introduce Zil, our moderator for the webinar. Zil heads Celent's retail banking practice and is based in London. His research is focused on retail banking technologies with a particular emphasis on consumer and card-based payments, identity, and authentication. He has a keen interest in payment innovation and how the perfect storm of competitive, regulatory, technology, and developments shape consumer payments today and tomorrow. He has a global perspective with particular emphasis on market developments in North America and Europe. Please can my panelists turn on their cameras and unmute themselves, and I'd like to take this opportunity to hand over to you, Zil.
Thank you very much, Molly, and welcome everyone to our webinar. I'm Bareisis. I'm the head of retail banking at Celent, but allow me to introduce my two esteemed panelists that will answer most of your questions and my questions. So first of all, Dmitry Yatskaer, Chief Technology Officer at OpenWay, and Rick Deyn is Senior Director of Financial Services Industry Strategy at Oracle. So I'm just going to do a very brief introduction to both Dmitry and Rick, and then ask them to take a moment or two just to introduce their companies. So Dmitry Yatskaer has been working in the payments industry for 20+ years and has been the Chief Technology Officer at OpenWay since 2008. He plays an important role in Way 4 product development strategy and participates actively in OpenWay's most sophisticated projects. He's advising clients on the optimal payment solution architecture, new business line development, large volume card and merchant portfolio migrations, and more. Dmitry, delighted to have you here. Rick is the Senior Director of Financial Services Industry Strategy at Oracle, and he has collaborated with global financial institutions for over 20 years in the areas of payments, fintech, and partnerships and compliance strategies. This gives him an interesting perspective on financial services trends and solutions. Prior to his current role, Rick Deyn held financial services solution positions at Oracle and Sun Microsystems. Rick, very nice to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
So you can probably see the poll questions. So please take a moment during the webinar to just vote on those questions, and we'll come back to them at the end of it. But in the meantime, let me just turn over the floor to Dmitry and ask him to introduce OpenWay.
Thank you. So at OpenWay, we have started in 1995, and we have expanded all over the world and grown into an end-to-end digital payment platform provider. And our Way 4 solutions, Way 4 is the name of our products, covers end-to-end payment spectrum. And as you can see, it covers card issuing of all different kinds of cards, more and more digital cards, but obviously physical, plastics, and virtual as well. It covers end-to-end omnichannel acquiring in both point of sale, physical space, as well as the e-commerce space. And it covers digital wallet as well as other emerging payment instruments. We are active in multiple verticals, certainly banking, as well as fleet and fuel payments and telcos. And over the years, we are happy to have been ranked as #1 by different ratings, most recently by ITA, and before we've been ranked as well by Gartner and Ovum. And as you can see, we also got an award of Paytech Awards for the best cloud solution with our customer Infuse, right? Which is quite amazing because at that point it was very hard, and it is still not so easy to run payments in the cloud, but we managed to do it. And that's what we are going to tell you about today. And as you can look into our customer base, we got tier 1 customer base, such as Nexi, the largest, and Equens Worldline, the largest acquired processors in EU, or Comdata, a major prepaid issuer in the States, as well as Finnet in Indonesia, NI, which is the largest processor in the Middle East, Equity, which is the largest bank in Southeast Africa, and the list can continue on and on. So now, hand over to you, Rick.
Rick, you are on mute, just in case.
I was. So thank you, Zil. Thank you, Dmitry, and it's a pleasure to be here. Now, not a lot of people know that almost every financial institution in the world today is a customer of Oracle across all segments, from banking to insurance, capital markets. And they use our applications, our on-premises and cloud technologies, and of course our database. And that makes financial services our largest industry, and where we have decades of experience. Now, with those high expectations of our customers in mind, we have built our public, private, and hybrid cloud so that we could offer innovation based on artificial intelligence everywhere with the same level of security, reliability, performance, and compliance. This is Europe, that our customers are used to. Now, that focus on enterprise processing may have cost us some initial market share, but we are quickly becoming the #1 choice for mission critical cloud processing. And it makes us very, very proud that OpenWay's customers have started to use Oracle's cloud infrastructure to run Wave 4. Because indeed, for payments processing, a number of qualities that only the Oracle Cloud can offer are very important. Like, for example, service levels on performance and manageability, as well as on availability. Also, the fastest growing global footprint for our cloud data centers, with coverage in the Middle East, in South America, and so on, or performance numbers that can be 5 times higher. And let's not forget a running cost that can be 50% less expensive than other cloud infrastructure providers. Or the largest range of enterprise cloud hardware options that are a good fit specifically for Wave 4. But the most important is, of course, how our cloud helps OpenWay to deliver an exceptional service to you as an OpenWay customer. So let's share some experience about specifically that. Over to you, Zil.
Well, thank you very much, Rick. As I say, I'm delighted to be in such a company. Very brief introduction from me then on Celent as well. We are a research advisory firm, and what we focus on is technology and technology innovations for financial institutions globally. So we work with technology and business leaders at the financial services companies, banks, insurers, and others, but also, of course, technology partners, service providers to those companies. And our mission, our goal is to help those companies make faster and more informed technology investment decisions so that they can improve their business. So we try and navigate this maze of technology options, distill best practices. We run, for example, model awards programs on an annual basis, where we recognize various technology initiatives, which then we write up as case studies. We have a large vendor database where companies like OpenWay, Oracle, and others are listed so that the financial service providers can discover them when they're looking for a specific solution. We produce research reports. We support clients on webinars such as this. So we try to be in the middle of things that are happening and kind of create value by linking up people and allowing them to network and share the insights and share knowledge. So before I turned it really over to Dmitry and Rick, I just wanted to share some of the research findings that we've seen on cloud, and how cloud is really becoming an increasingly important component of the bank's technology infrastructure. Everybody's really thinking about cloud, and I think it's fair to say that the attitudes have changed quite a bit in recent years. Not that long ago, if you asked a bank whether they would consider migrating to a public cloud, most of them probably would have shrugged their shoulders and said, no way, right? And now there's still some hesitancy, but as you can see from that chart on the left, they are thinking at least where to start, right? So many of them believe that selective migration of perhaps maybe some of the non-core systems will start happening first, followed perhaps by the broader migration to cloud. And on the right-hand side, if you see basically how the attitudes are changing, is that quite a few people now agree that it's really just a matter of time for most banks to run core systems in the cloud. And by core, I don't mean just core banking. I think a lot of banks would include payments in that definition as well, given how essential payments is for them. I think one of the biggest concerns historically has been for many banks about the security concerns. And what you can see here is that it's very interesting to see that actually banks now agree that public and hybrid cloud infrastructures can be more secure than even traditional in-house data centers. And again, why? Because you're leveraging the expertise of true experts, rather than trying to hire those people internally. Another big concern, of course, has always been the regulators and how the regulators are going to warm up. And again, I think banks are clearly seeing that regulators are warming up to public cloud for banking applications. On the other hand, you can still see that some of them say that my institution will continue to run core systems in-house for a while, right, long term. So it's clearly not a clear choice yet, and it will be interesting to see how banks experiment, how they migrate, and which systems they start moving first. The reason is when we ask people why are you considering moving to cloud, I think historically the answer would have been cost. Right? It would be fair to say that most people would have wanted to move from capex to opex, or just simplify the infrastructure and reduce costs that way. And that is still important. As you can see that there's a number of participants that still say that that's an important criteria. But if you look at what's bubbling to the top, it's rapidly becoming about improving customer experience, increasing technical resilience, accelerating the pace of development, increasing agility, and I have no doubt that many of these benefits, many of these points will come through the discussion today as well. Now, these charts were sort of not specific to payments. This is when we asked the participants more broadly about their views about the cloud. But I think it's interesting to see, certainly for me as the observer of the payments industry, is that I think the industry has been working hard to address many concerns about the cloud migration. And I think it's fair to say that there's probably been some additional thoughts and concerns that many banks would have had, right, in terms of payments. Things like, how do we deal with data residency requirements? What do we do with our in-house payment HSMs? And rather than stealing the thunder of Dmitry and Rick, I'm not going to talk about payment HSM as a service, for example, but just to show that I think the industry has been addressing that, and it's something that we've been following and writing about, trying to kind of help people understand how can you deliver things like payment HSMs that used to be sitting in-house now as a service and in the cloud as well. So all that's left for me to do is just to remind again that there are a couple of interesting poll questions. I think we might be running them one at a time. So take your time to answer the first one, and then we'll introduce the second one in a few minutes as well. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that we can go back to a slightly bigger version of our videos, and really then start the discussion with Dmitry and Rick. And maybe the first question, if I could just ask. So I talked a little bit about the benefits for migrating to the cloud, but Dmitry and Rick, what sort of things do you see from your experience with the clients that you're working on when it comes to payments specifically? What sort of benefits can your clients expect?
Right. I would say what we hear is number one benefit is speed to market. Because when you are in the cloud, when you get it right, when you have it in place, you can start onboarding the customers quite quickly. And particularly for payment processors, but for many other players as well, especially for acquirers who deal with merchants, it is quite important to be able to quickly run different integrations with their counterparts. And of course, in the cloud, it is just so much better fit for it because you have all these different API gateway layers of the shelf. You have VPNs, security layers of the shelf. You don't have to break your heads on how to get your partners within your perimeter, right? At the same time, the launch of new infrastructure becomes much faster. So if you want to scale, it is much more straightforward to just add new capacity. You don't need to think how about the floor space, how about logistics related to the servers, which is typically the case with on-prem or rented infrastructure in the data centers. So those are the numerous advantages. And indeed, as you mentioned, it becomes more and more another advantage point that potentially you can make it easier to be secure and resilient in the cloud, because you already have this infrastructure there, the network is there, all the backup facilities are there, the physical security is there, many things are there. You don't have to build it from scratch, which means that your initial investment to become a payment player is much, much lower compared to what it used to be just 5 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, if I can complement to that. So for me, certainly the pandemic that we are in right now is very much driving the move to digital, and the move to digital is very well supported by the move to cloud. So that is what is driving right now the move to cloud, and that is going really, really fast. Even this morning, I was talking to our product owners for the Oracle banking applications called FlexCube. And they were telling me, listen, literally every RFI that comes in, every question that comes in is about, can we run this core banking application in the cloud? Every RFI, right? Imagine that even before the pandemic, right? That was replacing a core banking application in the cloud. That was unheard of. Right now, that is absolutely the way to go. Now, having said that, the pandemic has driven, and you touched on it, Zil, drove the customer experience first. Right? Everyone was working from home, sitting at home. Everyone wanted to do whatever they could do on their phone, right? But if you think about it, the next level of experience is payments, right? If you want to use your phone, you want to use your phone with online delivery, online payments. So that is driving payments a lot. But right now we're even going into the direction of core banking. Now, the last data point is that what we are certainly seeing is that financial services in general is probably one of the most technology intensive industries, right? Where on average, like a corporate spend on IT is about 3-4%. In financial services, we're hitting 7 to 8%, right? So I think that where cloud is definitely a technology innovation, a technology improvement, that also enables the drive from banking into cloud. So yeah, it's going fast.
Interesting, and yeah, they're very much consistent with what we're seeing as well. Dmitry, you mentioned that sort of an investment to become a payments player. Clearly, this is not just for the startups and fintechs, right? It's maybe they are the first adopters of cloud technologies, but it's probably for other players as well. I'm curious if you could comment on kind of what type of players do you see moving to cloud first? How do you see others? Why would others not move? You know, is there kind of a reason for somebody not to go to the cloud right now? Can you maybe comment on that?
Right, and I would indeed, to what Rick has mentioned, we now see a similar picture in the RFIs coming for payment platforms. Pretty much in a lot of them, you get questions about the cloud in one or another shape. Some of them are just curious, others are really requesting it quite clearly. So more or less all kinds of players today consider cloud in one or another shape, but as usual, you have earlier adopters in fintechs or payment processors who see it really as a necessity. And then you have different players on side of the banks who might be more careful in moving there. But nevertheless, nowadays, there is no particular, well, there is always reason not to move, but the question is when. Right, and when considering that, of course, you need to look at from a few standpoints. One is that if you have already your infrastructure, it is on-prem, it is perfectly up and running, and you are not going to replace it over the next 3 years. That's clear. Then you just take your time, because then at the time you really want to move it to the cloud, maybe there will be already better options, better hardware, better everything. On the other hand, if you consider replacing your infrastructure, if your current infrastructure is just nearing the replacement depreciation cycle, then it's really good to consider that option. And then you have to look whether you have cloud data centers that are available nearby, and their Oracle Cloud is great because they're growing quite quickly, and the number of regions just keeps on growing. In Europe, we are just literally surrounded by Oracle Cloud data centers. In US, in Latin America, in Asia Pacific, they keep on growing as well. They're coming to Africa. So that's a good side about it. Now, and eventually you have to look whether you have the necessary expertise in your respective company, because obviously there are some specifics on being PCI DSS certified in the cloud versus doing it on-prem. So if you consider all that factors, then you know whether it's the right time for you to move. But sooner or later, I think the likelihood is quite high that vast majority of the customers would move to the cloud, except for those cases where you really have all data centers just literally far away. Then obviously it's better that you are just hosted in your country. But even then, what we learned from Oracle, that you have options to have piece of the cloud somehow running on your premises. But Rick can comment more on that one.
Yeah, sure. Well, data residency in financial services is extremely important, right? There's no denying that. But I do see that a lot of financial services institutions go way beyond compliance to demand data residency, right? Regulation frameworks change. Take a look at the EBA. All sorts of things are happening there. So data residency is absolutely an important element. Products, cloud at customer, Exadata cloud at customer. I'm not going to make this an Oracle product pitch, right? But yes, absolutely, there are plenty of options to do exactly that.
And in terms of types of players, so we talked about fintechs versus banks, so whether you're starting up or already have something. Do you see any difference in terms of who might be moving faster, whether it's on the acquiring side or the issuing side? Because I think you're kind of in the situation where you do offer solutions on both ends of that value chain, and I think you have clients that have migrated on both sides, right? Maybe you can talk about some practical experiences of those.
Yeah, indeed. They are going a bit more in depth. I would say in both acquiring and issuing, you have niches where it is easier to move them to the cloud. Just give an example. On acquiring, if what you want to move is a payment facilitator, a billing system, it is more straightforward compared to moving, for instance, a system that is driving physical point of sale terminals with chip and pin. For a simple reason, because in the first case, you may not even need to be PCI DSS certified, because you may not even have to store the card numbers in that system. And it gets pretty straightforward. However, if you have to move a complete chip and pin infrastructure, you have to keep in mind that you get to certify your infrastructure with PCI pin, which is obviously going beyond PCI DSS, right? Similarly, if you want to move your processing of, like a cloud-based processing of 3D Secure on behalf, then it has to be PCI 3DS in the cloud. So that's on the acquiring side, but very similar story you can see on the issuing side. If what you move is generally a card processing platform, well, generally it has to be PCI DSS because very, very likely it has to contain card numbers in certain form. But then you have to be careful if you have to, if you look into the card production cycle, because achieving PCI CP standard, PCI card production in the cloud, it's quite interesting. So I would say in both verticals, you can find niches or use cases when it's really simple and straightforward. And adding to that, I think on digital wallets is really straightforward. It's almost no-brainer, because in digital wallets, it's just a great fit for that. There, you don't even need a payment scheme access points, which is another sometimes pain point, which is because you currently don't really have yet Visa and MasterCard access points in the cloud. They're coming, but not available yet. So you have to place them somewhere in the data center next to the cloud. So I would say in every niche, you may find a very nice use case. And for some players, they can do it entirely in the cloud, while other players would have to put little pieces more in a hybrid mode.
Yeah. Maybe just a word on the size and the maturity of companies that move onto cloud. What we definitely see is that there's no real affinity. You don't have to be big or you don't have to be small to move onto the cloud. We have some of the largest banks moving onto our clouds, and we have a lot of startups going there. I would say that the way that you use cloud can be different. Like a mature application builder like OpenWay or the largest bank, they have a heritage of running their applications on an Oracle database, on Java, on WebLogic, on all of those technologies, RAG, technologies that they use to be really reliable, right? And they have a lot of reasons to go into the cloud and to make sure that that cloud technology supports that technology, that they do not have to take a step back in reliability. Whereas cloud native payment processors, cloud native application providers use different technologies to obtain the same thing, but they have a longer way to go in terms of architecting their way around. So different uses, but there's not really a limitation to who you need to be to move into the cloud.
Yeah, indeed, to what Rick said, important point, and I'm talking a bit more from OpenWay standpoint and taken for granted that a good payment application has to be able to run quite well in the cloud. But you're right. First thing to check is, are your payment applications actually able to run in the cloud? And if they are not able, or if they don't really have references, that could be also another good point to consider. Why not replacing them potentially with something more up to date? Because we found out that our architecture is such that it just fits multi-cloud model. We didn't really have to change it. We just had to continuously look at the new features of the cloud to bring them in to make it better and better. But from day one, we found out that it just runs well in the cloud. And we did this benchmark reaching 1,000 authorizations per second in the cloud. So it's important when you consider a move to the cloud to make sure that your payment applications are actually able to do it.
Okay, so benchmarking is kind of one thing, and I know all technology companies like talking about that and make sure that they do that. But let's bring it to life and let's talk about some real client examples. I believe you mentioned Infuse. I think you have some clients on the acquiring side as well. Could you maybe, Dmitry, take some time just to talk us through, some of those mini case studies, almost what they've done and what they've achieved?
Right. Looking at Infuse, they are running issuing processing in the cloud, and their issue portfolio is their card portfolio is fairly large. Yeah, obviously due to confidentiality, I wouldn't mention the name, not mention the size just like that, or customer names, but it's fairly large and is quickly growing. And apart from our card processing platform running on Way4, they also have their digital banking front end and open banking infrastructure, which they build in the cloud. So it's a nice combination. The volumes keep on growing, and they were really one of the first on the market. Pretty much when they were on the cloud, I would say almost nobody else, or even nobody else, was issuing in the cloud. And the other player that we have live in the cloud is a company based in UK called DNA Payments, and they're based they're on the acquiring side, and they run an Oracle cloud. From both standpoints, we see that on the cloud we don't really see for the moment particular limits in terms of performance. And now we are talking really to huge customers who are aiming to run huge proof of concepts. We are now talking volumes of tens of millions of cards, something really very, very big. One of the reasons is that there is a general move in the industry going, for instance, from risk-based infrastructure more to Intel-based infrastructure to something more distributed, more up to date. And there, of course, everybody looks to the cloud rather than just replacing it on-prem. Yeah.
Okay. Rick, I suppose, I don't know if you want to add anything here, but
if I don't talk, it means that I totally agree with Dmitry.
Okay.
Nice.
You mentioned the pandemic and sort of how that accelerated. We certainly saw a lot of kind of migration to digital in different shapes and sizes in terms of digital onboarding, digital self-service, especially with physical premises being shut, right? And I think that matters to payment companies as well. And cloud played a huge role. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about some of the experiences that you had around particularly around contactless, which is another. You mentioned digital wallets, Dmitry. I think contactless is another growth area. Maybe not just contactless, but contact-free. So sort of various different formats of including QR codes and kind of other technologies. Also, I think Rick, you mentioned about the working remotely, and so suddenly how everything had to go remote, including many technology projects as well.
Right.
So I don't know if you can talk a little bit about those.
Right. Indeed, very important point in terms of the contactless. And generally, I would say it's a blessing that at this time with pandemic, the industry has digital cards, because imagine if that pandemic had happened when we were still in times of plastic, then plenty of people, I'm not sure how would they even get the cards delivered. Well, people in some countries get the cards delivered, but with digital cards, it became far more straightforward that you just enroll, you get your Apple Pay or your Google Pay or other application instantly available. Your card gets enrolled and you are not dependent on coming into the branch and choosing your PIN code, right? And that's what we have embraced quite early with our Way for products. And obviously, in time of pandemic, we see really surge of growing of these digital products. Particularly, one of our customers that has a portfolio of 200 million cards running on Way for. During that pandemic, I think they had something like more than 1 million, probably approaching 2 million digital cards, which is fairly large portfolio, probably one of the largest digital card portfolios. At the same time, we made sure that we also offer the options for those customers who are based in the countries where you haven't got Google Pay and you haven't got Samsung Pay. For those, we offer solutions that you can use contactless SDK, integrate directly in your wallet. So we are pretty much the only vendor compared to other payment switch or card management platform vendors who's got this kind of SDK certified with Visa and MasterCard. And of course, that's something that you can run in the cloud as well. You just need to ensure that you have the right, that you have the HSM boxes available, that you have PCI, that you have payment scheme links, just with any other good issue processing, and there you go, right? Now, talking about the user experience, obviously, in order to run payments in the cloud, your payment processing platform, it has to offer proper web-enabled GUI, web-based GUI. It has to consume quite low bandwidth. And again, there we were, of course, on time for the cloud move. We were on time for pandemic as well. And as far as OpenWay is concerned, we managed to complete really large-scale projects for some of the largest European acquirers that you've seen on the slides on time, in schedule, despite the pandemic. So we just, all of us have switched to remote mode, although our customer, they're actually based in Milano. And as you know, this was the area which was really one of the hardest hit by pandemic. But nevertheless, we managed to complete it all in time, thanks to that remote way of working. But obviously the architecture allows for it as well. Otherwise, it would be just impossible.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we see as well, right? We are not in the business of cards, of be it plastic or touchless. That's where we work with with OpenWay, but the whole customer experience for us already before the pandemic, but very much sped up during the pandemic, is very important for us. And one of the things that we had already started is a massive project to bring the whole Oracle itself, front end and back end, onto cloud. So right now Oracle is Oracle's biggest cloud customer, because we, as I was saying in the beginning of this call, we are really serious about, we want to make sure that, you know, what we deliver to our customers does not fall over, that it is ready for that enterprise, right? And it felt kind of like that we had to move everything over. Now part of that in the customer experience side is that Oracle has launched a project called Redwood, which is about completely rebranding our website, the usability of that, but also our applications. And what you will see is over the next year, 2 years, is that all our applications will come out with new user experience not only about easy to use and configurable and so on, but also empathic, right? And that is about building artificial intelligence into the user experience and into the user interfaces. And what we are starting to see is some of our bank customers adopting that idea of using artificial intelligence to make their user experience empathic. So that based on what they know about their customers, the user experience just changes itself instead of you having to go into all sorts of preferences and configurations. So that's a big move, yeah.
Well, I think it's always good to take your own medicine, right? So it's good to hear that Oracle was the first customer or Oracle.
I am a big tester of Oracle Cloud every day when I do my expenses, for example. Yeah.
Interesting comment on the AI as well. And maybe sort of just a side remark, where do you see AI playing the biggest role in payments? Is it on fraud? Is it on user experience? So where do you think it will really catch on?
Good question. If you look, of course, the earliest adoption in terms of payments, that was in everything which is related to fraud risk management. In different shapes, first starting with payment risk management for payment transactions, and then extending into RBA, risk-based authentication for issuing and acquiring. At the same time, you can obviously find pretty much space for it into whatever is about this credit scoring. And you find more and more use cases. For instance, in chargeback processing, there are even companies who find out whether it makes sense to run your to try and dispute a transaction, or if you can see that it just doesn't make sense to dispute because the dispute costs would potentially exceed whatever you would win when it goes about small things like subscription fees. So it is I would say it is a big creative space. And there, of course, good thing about the cloud is that particularly for machine learning and AI, it's very important to be able to scale your infrastructure as and when you need it. So it's really helpful.
Yeah. So Oracle is really the supporting technology to payments, and certainly that is one of the things that we see. So this might sound technological, but one of the things that we have done is that we have built artificial intelligence into, for example, the database, so that the database maintains itself, patches itself, and applies the latest patches. Now that sounds nice, but the real effect of that is that once you start using that autonomous database, as call it, the risk of having human-induced failures and hacks drastically reduces. The TCO reduces by 80%, right? And if anything is important in payment processing, that is making sure that you have an absolute handle on fraud, on the possibility to not get hacked, and so on, right? So artificial intelligence definitely at the payment processing, but also the underlying technology.
By the way, I am keeping an eye on the questions as well that are coming in from the audience. And not surprisingly, we have quite a few around payment HSMs. It's something that I alluded at the start of my presentation, something that you mentioned on a couple of occasions. How do we resolve this conundrum of payment HSMs in the cloud? And maybe just for the audience, just to highlight the difference between general HSM as well versus payment HSM specifically, and what the nuances are. And then how does the industry, how does Oracle and OpenWay, how do you guys address that issue?
Right, perfect question. Indeed, there are HSMs and HSMs. You have those general purpose HSMs that you use for data encryption. This is something that you find, of course, in the cloud available off the shelf. Now you also have payment HSMs, and there are two options available these days. Either you go for cloud-based solution such as MyHSM, and then integrate it with your own cloud-based infrastructure. Or you go for your own HSM that you buy and you place into one of the data centers which has a good connectivity to the cloud. For instance, if you take Oracle Cloud, there is very good connectivity to the Equinix data centers globally. So you just you rent your cabinet, you place there your own HSMs, and then you ensure that you have a proper link to the cloud. Now, to choose between the two, there are several factors. One is, do you have the expertise to actually manage the keys, to manage the HSM in your company? Otherwise, do you want to grow that expertise, yes or no? And what the volumes are. So if you look at that the volumes are moderate and you don't have the expertise and you don't have time to grow it, then MyHSM is a good option. On the contrary, if your volumes are huge, if you have already all the knowledge in your company, then especially if you already have those HSMs available, then you might consider just finding a good cabinet and connecting it to the cloud, because it's still quite an isolated part of the whole infrastructure. And importantly, of course, you need to ensure and know how do you achieve the necessary PCI compliance. Again, is it just PCI DSS, or is it PCI PIN or PCI 3DS? Similarly, with general purpose HSM, one thing is to use it just for data encryption, but a different thing is to use it for PCI 3DS. And again, there it can be driver to get potentially your on-prem option or to consider MyHSM. So those are the typical factors that you would consider. So I would say the choice goes sometimes for MyHSM cloud option, and sometimes it goes certainly for acquiring your own HSM and ensuring very good connectivity to the cloud.
Yeah, no surprise that I totally agree, because Dmitry, we have had this conversation many times, and we from the start of our collaboration, we realized that having a good answer to that HSM question is very important. So absolutely, the way that Dmitry describes it is perfect. The only thing that I want to add is if you go and visit our data centers, which are co-located indeed with Equinix, you will see bank HSMs everywhere. Visa, MasterCard, Swift HSMs, you will see them everywhere, right? Because every and I've been looking at the questions as well. There was even a question of a very specific PayShield 9000 Thales HSM. Well, the choice is really yours, right? Whichever HSM you want to use or you need to use for PCI, you just co-locate, and there is a very defined way that is already architected to get payments from Way 4 through Oracle Cloud in those HSMs, and that service is called Fast Connect. So that's pre-architected.
Yeah. And to complement, also looking at some of the questions, just to make it very straightforward. So for the moment, the only cloud in the world that offers any payment HSM directly in the cloud is actually MyHSM Cloud, I would say, to offer it in a way that you can be PCI compliant and so on. right? Whether it's Thales 9000 or other HSM, because Wave 4, well, it used to support only Thales. Now it supports multiple HSMs already. So you have a choice. You can choose whether you need, where do you have most expertise. You also have different options in terms of cost. You have some HSMs that are quite cost effective for a single tenant. You also have those who are more expensive on one-off, but then they offer very interesting options if you really need multi-tenant with a lot of partitions. So nowadays there is a good selection of HSMs available, and there is also my HSM out there.
Well, I think we mentioned YHSM a few times. They've just become part of a larger family with Utimaco. So I'm sure those solutions will continue to evolve and then develop further.
Yeah.
Interesting question, and Rick, sorry to put you on the spot a little bit, but you know, sort of, what about the actual cloud providers like Oracle getting into this payment HSM? You know, what are the specific barriers that you still work with partners as opposed to just offering like a general purpose HSM yourselves?
Yeah, so yeah, it's not the first time that I'm getting that question, and I can tell you that yes, of course, that is one of the things that we are looking at. Now, as I said before, our sweet spot is really the large enterprises. That is for whom we have built the cloud. For that space, for now, we still believe that hardware HSMs, dedicated hardware HSMs, are the best way to go. So HSM cloud services is not our first priority. We have other priorities going on, and as long as we can support our customer base. But yeah, as this cloud-based HSM space grows, definitely, absolutely, you can expect that from us as well.
One of the other concerns I wanted to raise with you, potential, was again something that we mentioned earlier at the start of the webinar, was the local data residency requirements. And I can see that there's a question here from the audience on how do you store customer client data in the cloud if your country is prohibited from storing data outside of your country?
Yeah. You want to go first, Dmitry?
I mean, yeah, generally, if you have to store data in your country, well, if you have to store all data in your country, if you absolutely cannot export anything outside of your country, obviously, either you have to remain on-prem or you have to choose an option to have on-prem cloud. And that's something that Rick can explain more on how it works. Generally, it's a machine that runs on-prem, but in terms of the manageability, in terms of the upgrades, operating system patches, it is managed by the cloud provider, as well as in terms of provisioning. So it is an in-between option. Or indeed, if there is enough business case for one of the cloud providers to come to your country, then the cloud just gets to the country. Now, other important thing is always to consider and read carefully the data residency requirements, because in some countries, you are required just to keep a copy of certain data on-prem. In other countries, the legislation says that you can't export personal data, very well delimiting what personal data means, unless it is encrypted, for instance. So you really need to look carefully what exactly the law is saying, and assess, of course, the risks of the law changing so that you don't have to rebuild it. But typically, in our experience, just face it, it's an open loop payment infrastructure. So you like it or not, if your card is accepted somewhere abroad, your card number is just traveling abroad. There is no other way, right? It is never purely in country. There is always something which is going outside. And similarly, as you may know, major payment schemes, they just require even your internal on-us transactions to be exported to them nowadays. So it's not that much of pure in-country based. Often you can find a good solution still to benefit from the cloud on that. And in the worst case scenario, you may consider just doing things that do not require, that are less sensitive, like test systems. Potentially, why not moving your test QA systems? Why not moving the performance optimization system, so that at least for that, you don't have to complicate your on-premise infrastructure.
Yeah, I do agree, right? And so in theory, you will run into legislation or corporate preferences that is going to force you to wait to move to clouds until the point when there is a cloud data center in your country. Sure. Having said that, there are a number of solutions, and Dmitry has mentioned a lot. I totally agree that taking a close look at the regulation often is a solution, right? Because a lot of regulations, certainly in Europe, are not as strict as some people believe. But on the other hand, banks like to be on the safe side as well, right? Be a bit more holy than the regulation. But there are a number of technical solutions as well, and Dmitry mentioned those. Those technical solutions from the Oracle Cloud side all come in a product family called Cloud at Customer. And what is specific in that series of products is that the cloud stack is exactly the same as the public cloud stack, which means that if something runs on the public cloud, you can drag and drop it. I mean, that's not how it works, but you can drag and drop it into your own data center, right? At a database only level, and that is called Exadata Cloud at Customer. And a lot of banks use it, or for the complete processing, so that also your data that is in flight stays within your data center. And that offering is called a dedicated region cloud at customer. And that basically puts a complete cloud data center with exactly the same configurations, the same service levels, the same security, the same trust, the same manageability as our public cloud puts in your data center behind your firewall, right? So a lot of options, but indeed, and Dimitri's teams have been fully trained to find the right solution for Wave 4 and for you.
Thank you. I think that's really interesting. There's a question here on what are some of the challenges of migrating the system to the cloud generally, but I think we probably talked quite a bit about that, and I hope that we probably convinced the audience that the cloud is here to stay, and specifically for payments. Maybe just sort of turning that question a little bit more into what are some of the specific tips, things to consider, when you're thinking about the software partner, about the cloud partner, what are some of the things to look out for?
Right. So one thing is really to look for what is the payment application, and from different standpoints. On the one hand, does it have proven references in the cloud? Does it have live references with issuing and acquiring up and running in the cloud? How successful is that? How big is that? Talk to their clients, try to make some kind of reference calls. On the other hand, I would say don't necessarily jump into something which promises to just embrace all the latest stuff right away. Why? Because all the latest stuff is probably existing there or stabilized since a couple of years. But then you have other risks, because you may have the latest and greatest in terms of this or that SDK that you find in the cloud, but at the same time, is it really proven to work properly with the payment scheme? So it needs to be really the right balance between the two. Of course, the best is to find a platform which does both, which is already embracing all the latest cloud technology, which supports properly containers, which is scalable. That's the greatest thing. Consider Wave 4. At the same time, really look at the experience, right? Don't just fall into trap of embracing something which looks nice on PowerPoint slides, but then when you scratch under the surface, you find out that all vendor credentials are just running on completely different architecture, and the thing that they do in the cloud is just something new and not really existing. So that's first thing to check. Second thing, indeed, is to look and to make sure that you are okay with regulation, that you have decent network connectivity for your users to the cloud, that there is no frustration at all. Number three, consider looking at testing technologies, because cloud can be also a good move to revisit the way you do your test, to consider continuous deployment, continuous delivery and integration, right? So because cloud is just very well fit for that. So use this as an opportunity to make some bigger infrastructure refresh, right? Because that's a really nice reason. It's very clear, and at the end you get both time to market improvement and cost saving at the same time, and then you also have great potential for future growth.
Mm. Yeah, that is quite complete. So the word that I had written down here is be pragmatic about stuff, right? And I think that is what Dmitry is saying as well, right? By all means, ask for a test and dev environment. Every cloud vendor today has a free tier, has get some architects, try different clouds. Dimitri's teams, and you can reach out to us as well. We can help you. We can help you with that. Get some experience. Take a look at what is easier to use. Where is the price more predictable globally, right? Predictability in cost is very important. We do believe cost is very, very, very important, right? Absolutely go for the cheaper one, but do not, trade that in for resilience, right? Resilience, certainly in financial services, is not, unfortunately, not a given, right? So architect for that, but a lot comes out of the box. Just be pragmatic about it, test around, and yeah, follow the application vendor's guidance. That's important as well.
Great. Well, I'm very conscious of time. I suspect our audience might have to drop off at the top of the hour. I know we probably can continue talking about this. Just wanted to very quickly bring up the poll results. Maybe at least one of the questions, one of which was, are you running your card payment services in the cloud? And I think it would be very interesting to, I'm sure everybody will be interested to hear that 42% of the respondents said, no, not yet, but we plan to within 2 years. 21% already in the cloud, either 100% in the cloud, 7%, or at least part of the payment infrastructure is in the cloud, 14%. Another 9% said, no, not yet, but we're actively in the process of migrating to the cloud now. And 28% said that at the moment we're not planning to use cloud for payment services in the long term. And I can imagine that this is a question on many people's minds. I think everybody is going through that process right now, thinking what is the right strategy for them. And I think, as we discussed, there will be circumstances when it doesn't make sense to migrate to the cloud just yet. There are still challenges, although what I hope is that as part of this discussion, we convinced everyone on this call that cloud has many benefits that it can offer to the payments companies specifically, or companies that need to run payment services. And that the challenges, while they are real, they can be addressed. And this is definitely something that there are people with enough expertise already that can help you do that. And so if that is something that you are considering, I think any of us on this call would welcome another conversation and would be delighted to talk to you and help you out in that journey. Any final comments from you, Dmitry and Rick, before we close down?
Yeah, I mean, generally quite interesting to look into the second poll, which is kind of confirming our findings, right? That the digital wallets are the first ones to embrace moving to the cloud. Card payments, not necessarily talking about issuing and card production, is number 2, followed by merchant acquiring and card issuing. So quite impressed to see that our thoughts about it really match with what really happens in life.
Yeah. I would not have expected anything else.
Thank you.
No, last comment from me. Again, thanks to Dmitry and team for a great collaboration so far. My recommendation to your customers has been about being pragmatic. Well, I do feel that the way that we have been working on this has been very pragmatic as well, and the benefit of your customers has always been in front of everything that we do. So very appreciative of that.
Thanks a lot. It was really our pleasure to be on that session, and really excited to see how many people were attending us, and really thanks to all of you for your time and for your interest.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the audience, and thank you for our participants, Dmitry, Reka, and anyone else that put together this webinar. Really appreciate everyone's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Zil.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.